The Toronto Raptors have made multiple shocking moves to start off this NBA season, as we knew there was going to be some cuts leading into the start of this year. This is something everyone expected, but a couple of decisions that Bobby Webster made frankly took everyone by surprise and now puts other players in very interesting positions heading into this year's NBA season. So we're going to break down what these moves were, how they impact the Toronto Raptors going forward, and now the decisions that Darko Rajaković has to make regarding this team. And one thing that is very, very clear, that is very, very direct in all of these moves and all of these changes that the Raptors just made is that Bobby Webster has officially put his stamp on this team. It is clear that Masai Ujiri, while of course Bobby worked very, very close with Masai Ujiri for years now in the past, it is clear that Bobby Webster is putting his fingerprints on this team and molding it completely in his vision as the new lead of basketball operations for this team. So what just happened? What did we just witness in terms of moves that have been made? Well, news has come out that the Raptors have waived Ulrich Chomche, AJ Lawson, Jarrett Rhoden, David Roddy, and Olivier Sarr. That is the news. That is the update. That is what has come out. And frankly, this is very, very surprising to me, specifically the Ulrich Chomche stuff, because we knew that decisions had to be made, that Bobby Webster had to come in, given this roster, given the limits and stuff, that some of those non-guaranteed contracts were going to have to get cut. That was going to happen. David Roddy, very expected. Olivier Sarr, very expected. Rhoden, expected stuff. AJ Lawson was one of those guys that was on the brink because, you look at his stats in terms of what he did last season for the Toronto Raptors, 9 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, shot 33% from the three-point line, is 25 years old, Canadian, all that stuff, but showed a lot of promise, had some explosive big nights out there for this team, and AJ Lawson is just a very, steady, like a guy that could come in and be a very reliable 15th man. Now with RJ Barrett, not getting traded in the offseason, and this team being so deep with Gradey Dick, Jacoby Walter, with Ochai Agbaji, Jamison Battle, of course, Brandon Ingram, Scottie Barnes can play whatever wing position. Those guys out there in the mix, it's going to be tough for a guy like AJ Lawson to really sneak the rotation to get some actual minutes, except for even a ton of injuries. You'd have to have multiple injuries for AJ Lawson to really get some opportunities. So, using that roster spot specifically on that position is less likely when, one of these trades hasn't happened, as it was all talked about, discussed in the offseason. So, AJ Lawson is surprising because I thought he'd get the 15th man spot. I don't think you're getting many better players out there in the open market than an AJ Lawson, but it ended up happening, and that is what it is. The one that really came as a shock to a lot of people was Ulrich Chomche, who is a guy that, has a ton of upside, is a player that is, 6'11", 235 pounds, last pick in the draft, only 19 years old, remarkably fast, a guy that in the G League, his stats last season, they were very, very good. We look at Ulrich Chomche's stats, 19 games played, average 8 points per game, but really what the encouraging part of that was, he averaged 3 blocks per night, 9 rebounds, 1.3 assists, all that stuff. Ulrich Chomche had a lot of upside, and the thing about it is he was dealing with an injury. So as far as Chomche, according to Josh Lundberg, he showed flashes in Summer League, and the Raptors were encouraged with his progress he made last season before tearing his MCL. A raw but intriguing big whose young career has been derailed by injuries. The latest must have been significant enough for them to move on. So he didn't play any of the preseason games. He was dealing with some injuries, and then of course led to him getting cut. So of course, he had some upside, he had this, but really, anyone, if you're not going to be able to be healthy, if you're not going to be able to be in those, get training camp, get preseason run, get the end of garbage time minutes last season with his MCL injury, and now dealing with whatever injury it is, it was just enough for Bobby Webster to say, hey, I know that you have extremely high upside. I know Masai Ujiri was an extremely big fan of yours, and in my estimation, if Masai Ujiri was still on this roster, Ulrich Chomche would still, Masai's not on the roster. Masai was still running this organization. Chomche would still be on this roster, but that is what it is. Injuries happen, and he ended up getting cut. So that came as a very much a surprise, and now we look at this Toronto Raptors roster. Now we look at this team, and you see that front court. Yes, you could argue about positions. It's a positionless league and stuff, but I just have people graphicked in here now at this point. But, at center, you have Jakob Poeltl, and Immanuel Quickley really is someone that I'll probably stand on just watching him play, is more of a natural 4, can guard 5s and stuff, but is more of a natural 4 in this league. And CMB was playing more of that 5 position, was playing more of that role out there at the center spot. So, you have those guys out there in the front court. Jonathan Mobo ended up starting at center in the games Jakob Poeltl was out and all that. So that's your front court. And that's going to put Darko Rajaković in a very interesting position, because I came into this year hopeful that Ulrich Chomche would be able to at least give some, for a stretch of the season, be a backup center for this team. Have an opportunity with his athleticism, shot blocking capabilities, all that stuff. At some point this year, Chomche would be able to play that role on a 2-way contract. Of course, I didn't rely upon him, but over the course of a long NBA season, we've already seen Jakob Poeltl deal with injuries over his Toronto Raptors tenure. I thought that Chomche would be able to get legitimate minutes, and now guys like CMB are going to have to get some legitimate run out there at that center spot. Mamu Kilishvili, of course, depending on how you roll it, those two guys are pretty complementary in terms of their skill sets. CMB can be more of the defensive 5, Sandro space the floor out there, whatever you want to call it. But it is, putting Darko Rajaković in a very interesting spot with how the front court is going to be managed. And the other thing this signals to me, because Bobby Webster said, hey, we got to see how this group looks. If it looks good, we'll keep it together. If not, we're not afraid to make moves. Chomche's out. These cuts, these transactions, these things that happened today opened up a ton of roster flexibility. Blake Murphy laid it out pretty clear. The Raptors now have a 2-way spot open now at this point, and Lawson's decision likely came down to keeping the 15th guy versus saving some luxury tax wiggle room, and expect a few of these guys with a 905. So we'll see if they land with the Raptors 905, but this gives the Toronto Raptors flexibility. And what flexibility means. So the Toronto Raptors, a team that is in transition, in flux, new-ish ownership, new leadership out there at this point, new-ish leadership, whatever you want to call it, but a changing of the guard for this Toronto Raptors team. And of course, they haven't made any blockbuster moves, haven't made any blockbuster transactions, but Bobby Webster is putting his stamp on this team, and he's making sure that things are going to be flexible enough for it, whatever he saw in preseason, whatever the tweaks that need to be made to the roster, the major moves that need to be made to this roster, Bobby Webster is in a position to shake things up if necessary. And even if that comes at the risk of losing a prospect, the caliber of an Ulrich Chomche, the upside of an Ulrich Chomche, which to me really hurts because, again, did I expect him to be an all-star or something this season? No world. But 3-4 years down the line, if he's in the system, he's able to get some backup minutes, develops, improves his jump shot, improves his just basketball IQ, all that stuff. The raw upside is certainly there, especially given his age. So the fact that we're giving up on him right now, despite the injuries, despite all that, is still very, very surprising to me. But we will see how it all plays out. Folks, the season's less than a week away. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you are a part of the 53% that have not hit that sub button just yet, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. You guys best take as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.